An overwhelming shock of realization floods Emiya Kiritsugu with despair. Everything that he had fought for in his last 20 years was for nothing. All the sacrifices that he took and the trades he made were meaningless, and now there was no turning back. The ideals that he had sought out for and his actions all backfired upon their intentions, and in that very moment, his dreams, his childhood, and his hopes were crushed. He fell down onto his knees in pain as he witnessed thousands of people, a whole city burn before his eyes, knowing that he was the one who caused it. But the moment also served as a wake-up call for Emiya. It told him all too clearly that his very dreams were impossible. Becoming a hero of justice and saving everyone was simply a naive pipe dream that was contradictory in its nature. It was almost intentionally cruel because there was no other way to teach Kiritsugu to never chase after a foolish dream other than to destroy it right in front of his eyes, to demolish everything that he had ever fought for, going against his core values and ideals, to make him grieve and regret over his actions so much that he would never even dare to try it again, to traumatize him. And in that instant, he was clueless about what to do. Sucked in by pure agony, he began digging up rocks, begging to rescue even just one life. It was a promise of some sort. It was a way of saying that he would never chase after his dream ever again, and so in return, he at least wanted to feel the joy of saving even just one person. And when he finally uncovered a boy beneath the ruins, it served as a savior more for Kiritsugu than him. It was a second chance, a way to restart everything and to perhaps leave behind all the regrets that he shared in his previous life. The murders of his father, sensei, and inevitably the abandonment of his family that were ultimately all for nothing could be put in the past, and now he could focus on the future. Because suddenly he was in a new environment and he burdened a different role, to be a good father and to raise the boy that he had saved on that day into a fine young man. But perhaps that was not the right thing to do, both in a sorcerer's pride and as a moral human. Perhaps quitting his dream because it seemed too hard was cowardly and unjust, and perhaps leaving it behind to simply get a more fulfilling and enjoyable experience in his life was selfish and careless. However, it was clear that he now put only the people who cared about him front, because perhaps what he was originally doing was going to save more lives in the long run, and perhaps it was more helpful than what he later switched to. However, it was something that was ultimately going to break him, and he realized that not everyone can be saved, and so just protecting the ones that you truly value and love will feel far more significant and important to you because they were the ones that held weight in your life. In the end, the reason why he desired to become a hero of justice in the first place was to feel important and fulfilled. But the tough truth was that to be the most effective in saving lives, he had to kill to do it. He had to murder the root cause instead of always cutting off the leaves and twigs, because that was what took less time and it was what rescued more people. Although poetic on the outside, it was a cruel business that required those who worked in it to effectively disconnect themselves from the outer world and always put emotions and feelings at last, because human fervor and sentiment were what prevented workflow. It was a blatant hypocrisy from the very beginning, but it was something that Kiritsugu did not realize until it was all too late. By then, the damage had been done and he had killed many that he loved for the sake of his dream. And that was why the despair that he felt when he realized it was impossible was so immense. He had valued those people that he had murdered, but he was simply blinded by how idealistic the end goal could have been that he failed to make prudent decisions any longer. But it was also why saving that one boy's life meant more than anything. It was the first time that he put a loved individual in front of his ideal. And that made him grow a truly developed connection towards him that was not halted or degraded because his dream had always been put first. And that boy, Emiya, inevitably spent much of his time with Kiritsugu. And remembering that face that his father made when he saved him, made Shiro also wish to be a hero of justice one day. He wanted to feel that happiness and that euphoria that his dad seemed to display. And after learning that his father had given up on that dream, he was even more determined to carry it on. And this time, he wasn't going to make the same mistakes that Kiritsugu did. And this time, he was able to brace himself for the journey that was awaiting up ahead after his father's abundant warnings and lessons. From the get-go, he knew he would have enough willpower to continue on even if it did sometimes break him. The journey wouldn't be as happy and peaceful as it seemed to be, but instead it would serve as a cruel one for a reward that wasn't even too grand. But he was ready, and this time he didn't want to do it just for the sake of his happiness, but instead for the sake of others. He was prepared to destroy himself as long as it meant that he could rescue many others. And so as Kiritsugu died, he felt a feeling of reassurance and peace deep inside. He was happy that he had raised someone and that his dream could be carried on even after his death and failure. And this time, he knew that his son was not going to make the same mistakes that he did because he had learnt from him never to do so. Kiritsugu found his inner happiness and ultimately the purpose in his life that drew a perfect balance between a contribution to society and also his happiness. He still had his inner regrets of all the murders that he had needlessly committed and the fact that he was never able to rescue the daughter that he had with his wife. However, even with them in mind, he was satisfied by just knowing that his son would not go on to die with those same regrets. Kiritsugu spends the majority of the series entranced by his ideal. It shows the tragedies that he had to go through during his journey and ultimately the failure of it. In my opinion, I view this show Fate Zero as a supporting series for Fate Stay Night, which follows Emiya, Kiritsugu's adopted son. It shows why Shiro doesn't do certain things, but also why he does do certain things. And even though those reasons are somewhat covered in the series that follows him, I feel as though Fate Zero did a much more thorough job because, after all, it is 25 episodes and not like 4 flashbacks. But even with that being said, it still makes for a fantastic standalone anime. The first half seems relatively boring, especially the first few episodes, but they are just build-ups for the rest of the anime, and trust me, it is worth it. Okay, well, I'm going to go and play some video games now. Consider dropping a like on this video, it really does help me out, but a subscription would earn you my eternal gratitude. That's all I have to really say for this video. I love and appreciate every single one of you. I hope to see you very, very soon. Peace.